Welcome students. This lecture is primarily meant for the semester 6 students of BA Honours course. Some of you have asked me to repeat a few points regarding the use of language, the narrative technique in Alice Through the Looking Glass, written by Lewis Carroll. And this lecture is actually a remedial lecture for those students who have failed to understand or who were absent in my classes when I conducted the classes or I have given lecture in the college. You see, I have covered extensively regarding this text, through the looking glass. Now, this use of language is very fundamental to our understanding of this entire genre of nonsense literature and how Lewis Carroll has incorporated such techniques, how he has followed such techniques or strategies while writing this text. Now, before going to this aspect of language, we should look over the basic feature or this primary consideration regarding this use of nonsense technique and the overall idea of this genre. You see, nonsense genre of this particular mode of writing consists or it signifies or it indicates a shift in our understanding. In Bangla, we have this famous Tagore's phrase, আজব দেশ, সে এক আজব দেশ ভারী যেখানে মাছ উড়ে বেড়ায় আকাশে and পাখি সাঁতার কাটে. So it's a completely different world where fishes, instead of swimming in the water, they fly in the sky, and the birds, they actually swim in the water. So this is what we call as the topsy-turvy situation. Now you know about this situation of topsy-turvy because all of you have read Macbeth, and in the beginning of the Macbeth, in the initial pages, we find the famous line, the dialogue spoken by the witches, that fair is foul and foul is fair. So it's a completely different world where fair becomes foul and foul becomes fair. This is what we know as the topsy-turvy situation. Now this entire idea of topsy-turvy signifies a complete alteration of our conventional understanding of the world outside our home. Our material realization, the normal, the general pattern of realizing the outside world. A complete transformation, complete alteration of that pattern, that structure. This is what we signify as, or we denote as topsy-turvy, right? So in a sense, Lewis Carroll has employed these techniques, or he has delineated, he has rendered this topsy-turvy world. Because when Alice walks through this mirror, and in the mirror, we all know that the left becomes right and the right becomes left, much similar to what the witches say, fair is foul and foul is fair, ঠিক উল্টে যায়, right? So all the things get transformed. So this world where Alice goes in the novel Through the Looking Glass is a mirror world where the conventional pattern, the normal codes, the customs are entirely, completely altered, right? Completely changed. You see, regarding the specific use of language, a word or a digit which symbolize a certain thing in a particular language can be completely different when it is transformed into another language. For example, the digit 8 in English, the number 8 in English means 4 in Bengali, char, because you see the structure of the digit 8 is two small circles set are conjoined in a vertical pattern, in a vertical structure. That is the digit or the number 8. In Bengali it is char. So what we know as 8 becomes 4 in Bengali. I have told you in the class that one of the famous Bomkesh stories where Bomkesh servant Putiram acknowledged he was successful in decoding the number plate, the number of the car, by which Bomkesh solves the case and finally catches the culprit. The number of that particular car was 8080, which Putiram read as 4040, and finally the sleuth, the detective, was able to solve the case, right? So this happens. 8 in English means 4 in Bengali. So language, the very idea of language is in a constant flux. It is not static. It is dynamic, poribortonshil, modifying, constantly changing. Right? Language, what we understand as the basic principles of language, basic structure of language, can be changed anytime in the future. The language which Shakespeare had used, the very English which the bird had used during his times 400 years ago, has been completely changed. Now we are in a world where everything is being digitalized. We use words like SMS, right? And it has become a word rather than a full form. So this is the very idea of language which is in a flux. And language can be converted, language can be interchanged, language can be interlaced with one another. We know this is various interchanging, the various interconnection between classical languages like Latin, Arabic and Sanskrit. Even our Bengali, our own mother tongue, is very much influenced by foreign languages like Persian, by English also, and of course by Sanskrit too. So you see, in Through the Looking Glass, Carroll employs a different kind of word play. The term that we use is word play from the puns of Wonderland. In fact, puns are looked down upon here as evidenced by the fact that only people who use them in this novel are the gnat, who is directly told by Alice that puns are bad jokes, and the White Queen, who is characterized throughout the book as being foolish or disordered. You see, Carroll here changes the words themselves into both archaic, and the technique that he is following is what we call portmanteau. So what is portmanteau? The two meanings packed into one word. Two words conjoined with each other, such as slithy, combination of lithe and slimy; mimsy, combination of flimsy and miserable. So words like this is the technique of portmanteau. Interestingly, Sukumar Rai in his Abul Tabul has also followed the same pattern of portmanteau. Another is neologism. You see, language is a means to order the world, because you see, language in this novel has the capacity to anticipate and even cause events to happen. Alice recites nursery rhymes on several occasions, right? Which causes these two characters, Tweedledee and Tweedledum, Humpty Dumpty, and also the lion and the unicorn, to perform the actions that she describes in her rhymes. So Tweedledee and Tweedledum's quarrel begins only after Alice recites the rhyme in a broken rattle. Similarly, Humpty Dumpty's fall does not happen until Alice describes the event in the classic nursery rhyme, in the same pattern which she has read in her initial formative years. And the object of flowers. You see, the flowers reinforce the principle by explaining that a tree can scare enemies away with its bark. You see, in our language, there is no similarity between the bark of the tree and the bark of the dog, the sound produced by dog. But you see, here in this novel, Through the Looking Glass, this linguistic analogy, this linguistic homology results in functioning the common ground. Trees that have bark are thus able to bark just as the dogs do in the street. So this is complete changing, complete alteration of our common perception of the world. This novel also occupies the same silly, nonsensical world as its predecessor. See, through this wordplay, pointless battles, and the fantastical dreamlike setting, this novel, The Looking Glass, makes nonsense the norm. So, nonsense becomes the convention, nonsense becomes the structure. Right? So, it also suggests that attempting to make sense out of nonsense is the norm. That is what I have discussed very broadly in your class, in a very elaborate manner. That we have to find sense amidst the nonsense. So very quickly, if we go through this novel, we can find that Alice recognizes that she does not have the knowledge or the skill to understand the inner workings of the Looking Glass world. So what she does, she asks questions to everyone in an attempt to fit what she perceives into a framework that makes sense. So despite her attempts, as when Alice tries to figure out whether the thing around Humpty Dumpty middle is a cravat around his neck or a belt around his waist, Alice is overwhelmingly unsuccessful in interpreting that what she views, what she sees, is exactly the point. You see, Carroll also, in many instances, there are many examples, but Carroll, the author, uses nonsense to let readers on jokes and poke fun at stuffy traditions and school of thought. And if we give a close look, a minute introspection, then it will come out that when the White Knight constantly falling off his horse, and here Carroll suggests that anything that looks silly and contrived, if one is willing to see it as such. So Alice's conversation with Tweedledee and Tweedledum about the poem, the famous poem, The Walrus and the Carpenter, for example, pokes fun at circular philosophical arguments that no one has any correct answer. In a similar manner, when Alice's attention is turned towards the snoring Red Knight and suggests that Alice is just a dreamy figment of his imagination, what we find in the latter part of the novel, Carroll gestures to some religious theories circulating in the Victorian era, which was prevalent at the contemporary period, most notably that all human beings exist in God's dream. That's what Nojrul has told in his song Bhangicho Godicho Riti Khone Khone Nirojane Prabhu Nirojane Apraman. So we are already like playthings. The God, the Almighty, is playing with us. And I've also referred to King Lear by Shakespeare, the famous statement by Gloucester, as flies to wanton boys than we are to the gods, they kill us for their sport. So actually we are the things of sport to the great creator, the great Almighty or God, whatever we may call it. You see, at several points, Carroll makes fun of formal education and academic ways of knowing. The Red Queen refers to the dictionary as nonsense, while Humpty Dumpty suggests that since Alice had read the nursery rhyme Humpty Dumpty in a book, it is equivalent to the history of England. And I have also discussed in a very elaborate way the poem Jabberwocky, which Satyajit Ray in his book has translated or sort of rendered the meaning as Jobor Khaki. Jabberwocky in Carroll becomes Jobor Khaki in Ray's hand. So the poem Jabberwocky has apparently no meaning. The poem also follows a familiar format, the rhyme scheme and the meter that make it at the very fast fun on an auditory level to read or recite. Through the poem and through the nonsensical novel as a whole, Carroll makes the point that literature should be enjoyable, nonsense or not. So the primary motive was for enjoyment, but there is, of course, a very deep connotative level. This poem, Jabberwocky, can be read as, it is also still relevant and can be read by critics as critics have interpreted it, as seriousness, scholarliness and holding up intelligence and formality over anything else. So decoding the poem allows Humpty Dumpty the opportunity to lord his knowledge over Alice, but much of the poem's meaning remains a mystery as it seemed to Humpty Dumpty that they might even be making up his interpretation altogether. So Prior to writing the first novel, which is Alice Adventures in Wonderland, Lewis Carroll, at the time, it was unthinkable that talking sheep could exist outside of a simple morality tale. Or for that matter, that literature intended for children did not need to have a moral to be meaningful or worth reading. So Lewis Carroll, in this attempt, has changed the way we see literature, the way in which we understand literature and ascribe meanings to the text. So these are a few points that, with the limitation of time, I've said in a very brief manner, but these are few points that you can include while writing your answers for your upcoming semester exam.